Alright class, this is Mr. Stumbaugh. We'll make this fairly quick because all we're doing is basically solving one-step equations using multiplication and division, except now we have inequalities just like we did last section. Um, when you multiply by a positive number on both sides of the inequality, like if we have a true statement, 4 is greater than 2, and we multiply both sides by positive 3, 12 is greater than 6 makes it true. Our inequality sign did not change. When you multiply by a negative, this is where a lot of people ask me how I change the signs and all that. When you multiply by a negative number, 4 is still greater than 2. When we multiply each number by negative 3, we get negative 12 and negative 6. Well, now when we multiply by that negative, the sign must change direction in order for it to be true. Because negative 12 is not greater than negative 6, it is less than. A lot of your problems are going to use fractions. Don't freak out too much. There's a wonderful fraction button in your calculator. In this case, we have 1 over 8 times n is less than 84. I'm going to rewrite this to where it looks like n over 8 because it's the same thing. So when I have n divided by 8, I need to multiply by 8 to get rid of that denominator. So I multiply that whole side by 8, and I multiply this whole side by 8. Notice that it's positive 8. Positive 8 times 84, 672, and 8 over 8 cancel out. We have n by itself. Because we did it by a positive number, our sign does not change directions. N will still be less than 672. When we graph it, we have our number line, our starting point at 672. We have an open circle because it does not say or equal to. And because our variable is on the left and this arrow is pointing that way, my shaded arrow is going to point that way also. Now when we're dealing with the negative numbers, negative 3 over 7 times r is less than 21. When we divide by a fraction, if we flip the fraction, we can multiply. So that's what we're going to do in this case. We flip the fraction to where it's negative 7 over 3, and we multiply it on both sides. Well, when you do negative 7 over 3 times negative 3 over 7, they cancel out. So now we have 21 times negative 7 over 3. 21 divided by 3 is just 7 over 1. So we'll cancel those out. And 7 times negative 7 is negative 49. But remember, when we're working with these negative numbers, we have to flip the direction of the sign. So now when we graph, have our number line, our starting point at negative 49. An open circle because it's not or equal to. And because we flip the sign, our arrow is now going that direction. That's which way my arrow is going to go. Now we divide by positive numbers and negative numbers. So if we have a true statement, negative 10 is less than negative 5. When we divide by positive 5 on each side, we get negative 2 is less than negative 1. Sign doesn't change because that's a true statement. When you divide by a negative number, the sign must change directions. Negative 10 divided by negative 5 is 2. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1. Sign's got to change directions. It has to change directions. Make that a true statement. So in the problem, 60t is greater than 8. Divide both sides by 60. Plug this into your calculator using your fraction button. It'll spit out 2/15 for you. Or if you do 8 divided by 60, and then use your fraction to decimal button, you can do that. T is now by itself. T greater than 2 over 15. 2 over 15 is our starting point. It's not equal to, so we have an open circle. This inequality arrow is pointing that way. That's the way my direction is going to go. With negative numbers, negative 7d is less than or equal to 147. Divide by negative 7. Divide by negative 7. D is now by itself. We have to flip the sign because we divide by negative. So now it's D is greater than or equal to negative 21. So we graph negative 21. It says or equal to, so we have a solid dot. And then our variable's on the left. So this arrow is pointing that way, so my arrow is going to point that way. This is when we flip the signs that you guys were asking me about yesterday. If you flip the sign, it's because you're adding or multiplying or dividing by a negative number. When you add and subtract negative numbers, it's okay. You don't have to flip the sign. But when we multiply and divide, we will. Your homework will be page 293, 2 through 40, evens.